Okay, hello everyone. Welcome and thank you everybody for joining us. We have an incredible conversation today. We are here to shine a light on a very serious issue. We're here to talk about workplace bullying, racism, discrimination, especially as it impacts Black women in higher education and also in leadership positions. I really would like to dedicate this discussion this morning to the memory of a very wonderful lady from what we're understanding. Her name is Antionette Candia-Bailey. And we're going to talk about the tragic story of her and how we can come up with some strategies and solutions with Black women in higher education and leadership. Oh, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Alicia. I am a professor of social work. That's my full-time job. I'm also a therapist, and I work with a lot of Black women who are struggling, and also a lot of Black families who are dealing with some of these very serious issues. Um, and I am so thrilled I have a guest here today to help me talk about this. Do y'all know Chasity Wells-Armstrong? You should. Y'all should know her. Chasity here today. She's a social worker, just like myself, but she is former mayor of Kankakee. Since she became mayor, I have totally admired her and her leadership. From what I saw from her, I was like, wow, one day I want to be like Chasity. She's like holding it down, being mayor of a big city like that. And I was just so proud of her. So we'll have her joining us today. And I think together with Chasity and myself, we do have firsthand experience in being involved in leadership positions. And we are very sad and very concerned about some of the challenges that Black women face in leadership roles, and we want to explore some actionable solutions. So we're just not going to complain. We're going to talk about what we can do. But Chasity, I just want to thank you for joining today. It is really a privilege to have you here and share your insights and share your experiences. Hello, Chasity.
Good morning, Dr. Alicia, and thank you for having me. And I just want to be clear and transparent that I am no longer the mayor of the city of Kankakee. I actually am doing life coaching now, working to empower women leaders and executives, to help them find their voice and their confidence, to reinvent themselves, and to structure their lives in a way that they can align their values, but also protect their health. That is that's where I'm focusing my work on as we move forward today.
Isn't that meaningful? I just love it. It's the experience that we've had in these positions where we're like, what did I need when I was struggling with some of these things? And it's not going to be easy. So thank you, Chasity. So before we dive into our discussion, I want to take a moment and acknowledge all of you all joining us in the chat. Hey, Dr. Lamar. Okay. Her dissertation was on workplace bullying. Oh, Dr. Lamar, I need to give you a link. You need to come in here. Please be active in the chat. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate that. It ain't easy for a Black woman in higher education and in leadership positions. Thank you for joining us in the chat. And I don't know, are you guys familiar with Sister Antionette Candia-Bailey? Anybody already know about this topic? Don't know about the topic. Let me just give you kind of a scenario what happened to this
Yeah,
um
I could share.
happened to our sister. A turn of very unfortunate events. Dr. Antionette, she served as the vice president of student affairs at Lincoln University. Now, Lincoln University is a historically Black college and university. So it's an HBCU with a white president, a white male president. And I thought that was kind of an interesting decision, President Mosley. So she has, what happened with Dr. Antionette is that she was facing some challenges and she wanted to bring some of these issues, systemic issues in higher education that she was experiencing at Lincoln University. And she wanted to talk about these things. And she she filed a grievance and she filed a very formal complaint and addressing some of her concerns that she had with administration President Mosley in particular. And her grievance was expressing some concerns over what she perceived as workplace bullying, unfair treatment, and she also talked about discriminations at a HBCU of all places. So, despite her intentions to really seek a resolution, she wanted to foster better work environment. From what I'm understanding, her actions led to immediate and severe repercussions. So she was, I would say, unceremoniously dismissed from her position. And this decision was communicated to her from the president. She seemed to have been very alarmed by the lack of due process. And she wrote a 10-page manifesto and sent it out to everybody just before she took her own life. And in addition to being let go, she was instructed to vacate the housing immediately, and that was part of her employment, apparently. This instruction came without prior notice, and it really left her facing not only the loss of a job, the stress that she was enduring leading up to her dismissal,
Public
but she
humiliation.
yes, she
Mhm.
was also distressed by her immediate displacement. So this abrupt termination kind of highlights this personal ordeal that was faced by Dr. Antionette Candia-Bailey. It also underscores, I think, broader issues of workplace bullying, racism, and discrimination within academic institutions, even HBCUs, apparently. And I think it raises really good questions about the mechanisms in place to protect employees from unjust treatment, the avenues for voicing her grievances without fear of retribution. And I want to make one more statement before we get into our topic. Dr. Antoinette got her PhD by studying and researching this very topic that had such an impact on her. And there was an interview with her dissertation chair who said, I had no idea that while she was working on her dissertation, that these were some things that she was experiencing. And I'm just amazed at the naiveness of that comment, because if you are tuned into anything that a lot of Black women talk about in leadership positions, it's always this struggle to be heard and to be recognized, to have our voices there. So anyway, we want to continue this conversation with myself and Dr. Chasity Wells-Armstrong. And so Chasity, as we talk about this topic, as I go through the very serious issues with Dr. Antoinette, what comes up for you?
Well, one of the things that comes up for me, and I'm not a doctor, but thank you, Dr. Alicia. One of the things that comes up for me, I think you did a great job of giving a synopsis of her story for people who are not aware of her story. She had only been in her position for 9 months. So she was new in her position. She was really proud about being in this role because she's an alum of the school. One of the articles I read mentioned that her mother had purchased a brick in her name when her daughter went to the school. And then, of course, when Antoinette went back as to work there as an employee, she purchased a brick herself. That's how much she loved this university. It was very much a part of who she was. I was not fortunate enough to attend an HBCU, but everyone that I know that has went to an HBCU, there's a connection there. There's a very strong connection and pride and family. And that really resonated from her story, from what I read. The other thing that stood out for me, like I said, she was only in her position for 9 months, and there was some indication that she was not being responsive to her subordinates. So there had been some issues raised from people that she supervised, and allegedly she had not been responsive. And this is, it's very, much the writing on the wall of how they use this to justify getting rid of her. So one of the questions I had as a coach is, she's only been in the position for 9 months. Why was she not, what kind of support was she offered to do her job? Was she offered any support? If she wasn't responding to complaints that were coming into her, who was there to coach her or to guide her or, to help her as she developed in her role. She hadn't even been there for a year. The other thing that really stood out for me is that the university president, who's a white man at a HBCU, this is very common when you look at academic leadership. The presidents are often white males. But when I read his background, he had only received his PhD 1 year prior to going into the role of president of Lincoln University. And his background was being the school's athletic director, and he had been the head coach of the men's basketball team. And so when I saw that, I just envisioned that if a black person had applied for the role of PhD of Lincoln University with that background, they probably, I'm pretty confident that they probably would not have been selected to be in the role. And it doesn't sound like he was equipped, with the leadership skills, with the managerial skills, with working with people. How was he screened, and what criteria was used to select him as the president? And not only not having the management and leadership skills, but working in a predominantly black minority university. So those were some of the things that came up for me.
Yeah, it's almost like, oh, he was able to coach a bunch of probably some black players at a university. So he's good at managing black people. That's what that means, because you're an athletic director. And you think about like the stereotypes of why a lot of black students go to college. They're athletes. This whole thing about being an athletic director. So therefore he could run a whole university because he was able to successfully manage black people on the court. Like, that's what comes up for me when I hear that story. And coaches do a good job of do this, do that, of being very direct and not necessarily getting input from the players necessarily, but they're just used to top down. This is how it's going to be. And I just know not all coaches are like that, but I'm thinking in my mind, this is probably his approach to things. And it was very successful probably for him because it was a top down, clearly defined. If you're a head coach, everything you say goes. But that can't translate into academia. I am appalled that he would be selected to lead an institution of higher learning with faculty. I think I looked up 60% of the faculty are African American. They could not find one person who was African American more qualified than somebody who was athletic director.
And I just, yeah,
Go ahead.
and I just want to add to that too. When you think about a coach, I mean, we're coaches too, you and I, but we coach in a different way. I think you raise a very good point in terms of he's a competitive driven guy, right? He's the head coach of a college team. It's extremely competitive. It's extreme. He's not the person that's probably accustomed to really sitting down and having these conversations to get at different layers of what is going on with people. He may not even, that may not be someone that you even ideally think about approaching if you're having some, inner turmoil or conflict such as she was having. And so it's very interesting, that he would be put in charge, to lead a team, in terms of the leadership of the university. Athletically is different, but when you are leading a team of people, it's different. These are not robots. These are not machines. These are people with lives and with different things going on in their lives. And you need to show up to support them and to support their mental health.
Oh my goodness. So everybody, hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us in our conversation. Hit the like and share button, please. Everybody who's here today, and forward this link to this video. Any Black woman who's got leadership positions, who are doing it big, forward this conversation to them, because we're going to talk today about challenges, not only in higher education, but in leadership positions in general for Black women with a heavy heart. We are here to address a particularly grievous aspect of our discussion today, the loss of Antionette Candia-Bailey, PhD. She sadly took her own life. And I think it serves as a stark reminder of the seriousness of mental health issues and struggles that's exacerbated by systemic racism, bullying, and discrimination, a topic of which she talked about in her dissertation. And Coach Chasity, part of the work that I do is I help deal with trauma. And it was interesting because I was talking about this last night with my husband, and I was saying, this is PTSD. And studies have shown that race-based traumatic stress is an injury, and the emotional pain that results from not being supported and not feeling that your voice and your pain and the things that you're struggling with is heard, that this workplace hostility, okay, it's a phenomenon that, let's see, it has an effect on your physical health, it has an effect on emotions, psychological, even your spiritual health. It impacts all of these areas of what I can call safety and sense of self that's been threatened due to feeling discriminated against and treated unfairly. And the symptoms of these are the exact same symptoms experienced by survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Rage, depression, you devalue yourself, you internalize some of those issues. You say, what is wrong with me? You have I'm certain this lady has all these high hopes. I'm going back to my alma mater that was a place of positivity for her. And she wants to give back not only to the university, but to the student body population. She wants to give back to the student body population. And she's got to internalize that. Clearly, she internalized that to say, what is wrong with me? Why can't I be seen in this way? And I think it speaks to the fact that Black women in these positions, we got no place to go. We have no place to go of which we can share and have support for ourselves. And a part of it is because we don't feel safe and secure. I don't trust any of these people. So
Yeah,
I'm not going to open up.
and people have to keep in mind, there's HR departments, but HR is there to protect the organization.
Yes.
HR is there to protect the organization. And so, I've been in situations, and this is not just happening in academia, this happens everywhere. And a lot of times what I see are Black women are brought in because it's like a double-edged sword, right? Black women are known for getting things done. Black
Yep.
women are known a lot of times when we're leaders, we're no nonsense, we get things done, we're problem solvers, we're hard workers. But at some point, when you take a stand to address something that you don't think is appropriate or someone is out of line and you start ruffling feathers, then you get punished. And not only do you get punished, what has created such anger in me is it's not enough to say, okay, this is not working out. Perhaps we need to part ways. We're not in alignment. It then goes to, we're going to destroy you. We're gonna tarnish your reputation. We're gonna tarnish all the good work that you've done, and we're gonna destroy you. And that's what invokes so much anger for me, is because it's
Yes.
not enough to just separate. They could have just, let it, if you have to separate and say it's not working out, we're not in alignment, I don't see a path for us to move forward together in a healthy way. That's one thing. But then to tarnish her, that she's incompetent, she's not doing her job, to put her out of her apartment, and create a situation where she's homeless. And so now that you have the student body upset and protesting
An alumni.
and you have alumni
Mhm.
coming forward and you have the board coming forward, and he's feeling stress and pressure now. He gets a paid leave of absence and she took her life. So when she was dealing with the stress and the pressure and being overwhelmed and feeling like, you know what, I can't handle this, because he's been contacted, the president, John Mosley, has been contacted on several occasions to give a statement and to provide a response. he doesn't want to deal with it. And he may be being legally advised not to at this point to give a response, but he has the luxury to be off work, to have some place of peace, right? Right now. And and he's getting paid when he was part of the problem. And that angers me. That is
I'm angry too. And that's another thing. Like, why can't Black women just be angry at things that make them angry? Why can't we have that expression without being labeled as a problem?
because
Like,
we are
you're supposed to be
dehumanized.
angry.
Because we are dehumanized.
Yes.
And me coming from a political space, I was the first Black mayor in my hometown, which is in a Trump Republican county. So we're not going to get into politics, but you are dehumanized. I mean, we see it on Facebook, we see it in social media, the bullying that is going on by adults. And as an elected official, you have no recourse. People can put things out there about you. They did. They said all kinds of things about me that were not true, that they had no evidence for, no support, and you have no recourse. You can't sue them. A everyday person could say, "Hey, that's slander, and you're in libel." But when you're elected, they can do whatever they want to do to you, and they know they can, and they do it. And they're trying to destroy you. We are no longer in a space where I disagree with what Dr. Spencer said or what she did, or I disagree with her policies. Now we are trying to destroy people. And I
Yeah.
have a problem with that. We are stripping people of their humanity.
Absolutely. And it's gaslighting to the 10th degree. And thank you. Okay, so we have a guest here, Dr. Tachi. Dr. Tachi is also she teaches in academia. Let me bring her on here so that she can give some more color to this conversation. And Dr. Lamar Spencer, thank you. She says, yes, Coach Chasity, she's agreeing with you. HR did not help her. And they put her on a performance improvement plan. That's saying it is not all these other people. She is the problem. Isn't that something? Dr. Tachi, you want to come in here? Let's welcome her. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Dr. Tachi, what do you have to say about our conversation today?
She said, what don't I have to say?
Yeah, really, it's like, where do you even start? Well, when people say, where do I start? Where the hell do I start? That's basically where we are. As I was coming in, you're 100% right. HR is useless. No disrespect, or maybe disrespect intended to the HR professionals out there. But like you said, they are not there for you. They are not there to protect you. They're there to protect the organization. I personally know 3 people in academia who have had issues that have been discriminatory, racial, and their first thing is always to go to some sort of mediation type thing, right? So before you sue, let's do some mediation type things. And it was blatant. So I know 2 at large universities this happened. And so here's the thing. When you are in a doctoral program, or in any type of graduate program, you are geared and pushed toward the biggest of the big, that you want to try and get to these large research institutions, and under the guise of they need you there, they need diversity there, the students need you there, and so you go, but then there's no support for you, none whatsoever. I will say I'm very blessed and lucky that when I had always taught, but then my first job outside of being a doctoral student was at a large university here in South Florida. I have to say that my experience is unlike a lot of other Black women that I've talked to, because I had the support of everybody. In fact, I was told by, the dean's office, somebody that worked there, they said, whenever you ask the dean for something, he always says yes. He tells everybody else no. So they would have my back. So stuff would happen. They're like, nope, not her. So that was unlike a lot of Black women's experience in academia. So I realize I'm very lucky, and I probably don't have the right to speak on this. But looking at some of my other colleagues who have experienced, and that doesn't mean I didn't experience microaggressions, but I was just like, be gone. But for some other people, when you try the hunt, be gone, it ends up costing you in some way, shape, or form. And so, the big thing is that in order for us to continue to enter academic spaces, whether it's an HBCU or a PWI, because remember, she was at Lincoln, we need to have the support. And, we think sometimes it's going to be better at an HBCU. Well, not necessarily, because they have internalized misogyny from the oppressor that has then been transferred to Black women or women in general that work there. And so there are issues when it comes to that as well. So there needs to be support systems before we continue the conversations of what can we do about these things. Support systems.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in because I absolutely agree with you, Dr. Tashi. In academia, you do need to have an advocate. And one thing I will say is that I was fortunate enough, myself and another colleague of mine who's African-American male, we had what we would call a mother hen. She was there. She wasn't letting anything happen to us. She mentored us. She said, be careful with this person you can trust. She gave me the lay of the land. And while she was there, her tenure at that university, she protected us. She guided us. She nurtured us. She mentored us. And we were able to get through and get tenured and get promoted. But as soon as she left, the hyenas came out. You know how hyenas come in and then they're a pack of people that work together and pounce on you. That is what happened as soon as she left. And it's so funny because I talk to him to this day and we look at each other and we just laugh. And how did we go from the superstar faculty members to all of a sudden we were the Black, scary, incompetent faculty members who didn't know what they were doing? How did we go from that? So for the first 12, 13 years of my life at this university, I was the stellar professor. And then all of a sudden I went from that to she's just scary and incompetent Black person. How did I go from that? I must have took a crazy pill all of a sudden.
They use the tool of racism. They use the tools of racism. I had a situation where I was managing, and I won't speak much on it because I'm pursuing what my recourse is, but I had 4 positive evaluations from a board of 7 people. And then when I raised my allegations about what had been going on, what I had been experiencing, the investigation turns into me being investigated, not the person who
you were the whistleblower,
who I had expressed these allegations. But the other thing that I found, in my reading as we got prepared for this, is that a lot of states, I believe only Puerto Rico, has protections in place for employees in the workforce. So if the employer doesn't violate you under the protected classes of gender, race, right? She's at a HBCU. So if she says I'm filing a complaint based on my race, based on being Black, based on being a woman, it's like, really? You're at a HBCU. And so there needs to be some legislation and protections put in place so that people in the workforce have that protection, that they don't have to fall under this protected class. Like me, I'm Black and I'm a woman. The protected classes are gender, race, disability status, and so that's how they're able to maneuver around this, around their bullying and their discrimination and all the other tools that they use, because the majority of the states don't have these protections in place for employees.
May I add something too? And it's probably not going to be nice, but when have I ever cared about being nice before? I don't. Your excellence calls out their mediocrity. It goes to show that they weren't that excellent or bright or stellar in the first place. And you had a buffer in that colleague of yours, the person who took you under her wing, right? Once that buffer is gone, now the floodgates are open for them to openly resent how excellent you are, because now I have to be excellent. And you are excellent despite all the roadblocks that are put in your way. And if they're not excellent and they don't have roadblocks put in their way, that just means I'm just mediocre. And they hate that. People like that can't stand the fact that they can never be more than what they are. And so in order to shine, they have to suppress you. They have to talk about you. They have to make you seem like you're incompetent. Therefore, they have to make you seem like peanuts because you are actually steak. Everybody else around those people are peanuts. But to make you on peanut level and not steak, I have to bring you down. So now we're all peanuts and I'm the biggest peanut. But the fact is, you're actually steak.
Yeah, because they have to, when you're in these leadership positions, that means that they can actually learn something from you because you've experienced more, you've known more, you've been doing what they just started doing for a very long time. So I can't teach you anything. You think you come in these positions and you know everything there is to know. Hello, I was trained by the best in my field. I was trained by the best in my field. You can learn from me. Because I saw your doctorate degree. It did not come from a big university. It came from, I don't want to talk about online PhDs and stuff like that, but there's something to be said about getting a PhD from an actual institution, large Research One institution. You are not the same as someone who gets it from, you just bought the classes online. I'm sorry. Like, there's something to be said about going through these channels and being basically hazed into these sort of positions because it's almost like this idea you're in the academy, and they know college professors live the best life. Like, it is really a cool job. It's fun to do, to teach and to be in a position with students. Now, I want to talk about, because we're talking about anecdotes, and I know that Dr. Spencer in the chat, I just want to say hello to her again. We're talking about anecdotes. But this is systemic. Yeah. And I want to, as you guys were talking, I was bringing up, there is a book published called Women of Color in Mid-Career, Going from Pet to Threat. And it was written by a lady out of Florida. Her name is Kecia and Thomas. Her last name is Thomas, and she spent time researching and looking at these sort of issues. And the thing with going from pet to threat is that when Black women are first put into these positions, everybody's excited to see them there. You're like the pet, right?
I was personally recruited.
You were recruited to run?
No, in a different position.
Okay.
Recruited because of the experience I
had. Wow. So they reach out to you. You're the pet. Everybody loves you. And then very quickly, you go from what is called the ideal person, competent, and all of these things. And then instantly, you go to being in a threatened position. And people are threatened by your competence in your job. What are you going to say?
And holding people accountable. Holding people accountable. The environment I went in, it was a hot mess. People wouldn't even respond to their subordinates. I had department heads. They would get an email from their staff, and if they didn't like that staff, I don't like Dr. Tashi, I'm not responding to her. She emailed you 6 weeks ago. What do you mean you're not responding? So holding people accountable because they are used to functioning in dysfunction and doing what they want to do in a toxic environment, and then you come in and say, I take my job seriously. Hey, we got to make some changes around here. Now you've become the problem. Now you become the problem.
And not to interrupt, the thing is, it's a double-edged sword, because if you come in and clean up the rubbish and make things right, you're the problem. If you just go along with it because you know it's going to be a problem, if you clean up things, oh, well, she didn't do anything. You're the problem. So it's set up. The system is set up for you not to win. All of this is performative at best. It's performative. It's theater on their end by recruiting you to be there to add to and it doesn't mean that we're not the best in terms of what we do, but we also check off some other boxes in their heads too. And we have to know this. So then you come there, you do beyond often what you're supposed to do, and it's a problem. So, the thing is, and I hate to say it like this, it's very difficult to win a system or a game that was designed for you to lose.
Exactly. And that's the system in America, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, what they talk about in their study, they studied this and they said what they found was that Black women are suspicious. They are seen as suspicious by their competency by their peers, their supervisors, and in academia, you also get it from students. They were saying that Black female faculty have lower teaching evaluations, and their expectations by students is that they are expected to be entertained. They're overburdened by service expectations because they call it the Black tax. They're like, every time there's like a Black issue going on, they put it in there and they say, okay, you need to now spend your time away from scholarly activities to help deal with this student issue, right? And they said that it overburdens their service expectations, reduced opportunities to advance. And they said it's also highlighted by, of course, a lack of Black women represented within faculty and administrative positions. And then she goes on, they interview her, and she says, I am really saddened by the passing of Dr. Antionette Candia-Bailey, and it brings great emotion for her. She goes on to say, I am so sorry that this happened, but as a Black woman in academia, I have also experienced bullying, passive aggression so bad that she said herself, she also had suicidal ideations. And she says she experienced retaliation, passive aggressive actions that was made to make her wonder, what is my purpose in academia and in my life? Because so much of what we're researching and studying, it's part of who you are. Like, it becomes part of your identity. I'm a college professor. I'm a high end. I'm a manager of this company that I love so much, and I feel passionate about the type of work that I'm doing. And she said many transgressions happened in her short period of time. She says that she had no choice but to leave. She left academia, and she said, I had to protect my spirit. I had to protect my dignity and my sanity. Unfortunately, as Black people, I think we've learned to stay in our careers or positions of stature because we are opening the door for opportunities. There is often no space left for us to express the emotional, mental, physical side effects that come along with making change as a minority. And she goes on and on with her research and what she's found. She says that interventions need to be made, right? Designed to address anti-Blackness in corporations and in academia to require more nuance and must target the unique issues that Black women face while providing robust and mental health services to address these needs. Mental health services. We cannot turn away from the stories like Dr. Canida, no matter how heartbreaking they are. It is imperative for us to center these experiences as if we are to ever develop institutions that truly propel equity and justice in the pursuit of higher learning. And I really, really admire all of us for speaking out. I don't know if anything will ever come of this, but I hope that everybody here today, I just want to thank again everybody for joining us, because we're just here talking, and I'm hoping that we can raise awareness, and I hope people who are watching this will know that you are not alone. And I guess that leads to my next questions. What do we do? How do we motivate? How do we move this sort of pain that all of us are experiencing? We're competent, we're smart, and we're threatened. We're seen as a threat. What do we do?
I have one thing. I have a colleague that's a dear friend of mine, Dr. Anise Fisher, who is educated from Harvard. And she just wrote an article called Hold Steady or Issue an Exit Ticket. And so that kind of speaks to what you were saying. We, a lot of times when we are the first in a role, you know, or we always are thinking about who's coming behind us, particularly when we're one of the first in a row. You know, we want to do a good job. We know we're under more scrutiny than anybody, you know, because we're the first. And there's all these stereotypes that we're up against. And so we're like working hard every day to prove ourselves, knowing that somebody's coming behind us and trying to make it easier for the next person coming behind us. But her article speaks to the very things that you just highlighted. And at what point do we continue to sacrifice ourselves and compromise our own health and mental health, especially. And so she wrote this article. It's called Hold Steady or Issue an Exit Ticket. And basically giving people permission, not that we have to give people permission, but letting people know it's okay to make a choice for themselves to walk away. You know, sometimes people in the academic space can go on sabbatical. Sometimes that's not available. But as a coach, for me, if I'm working with a client that's in this situation, as a coach, I would be really working with them on what does mental health look like for them? What does a healthy life aligned to your values looks like? And then, you know, if it's not there, creating the exit strategy. Let's get a strategy in place. You know, if I had been her coach, and of course, life coaches are not therapists, so I would have recommended that she get, you know, that she's get under the care of a doctor. A doctor can prescribe medication if that would have been something that would have helped her. The other thing is that a doctor can put her off work. A doctor could have given her a note, taken her off work so that she can kind of regroup. Meanwhile, work with her coach, her life coach, to figure this out, you know? And so those are some of the things that I would recommend.
Yeah, it's like you're at these your workplace becomes part of who you are. And I think I had to learn how to develop a life outside of the university. It's like, you know, I can't put my my self-esteem can't be based on what some random white people think about me, you know, and I don't even think they want that responsibility. I don't care for them. They don't care for me. It's mutual, and that's fine. I can still continue to do my job. I don't really like you, and no, I'm not going to open up to you, but I can still do my job. I know my job very well, but I just started, and I think that's been therapeutic for me, is I've started to build a life outside of this little tiny institution or this little tiny place where I have been able to do so many wonderful things, of which I can also look at and say, wow, I've accomplished so much. So, you know, part of what it's just like, why do I have to inconvenience myself and go find another job because you don't like my presence? That's not my fault.
I'm
And
not saying that you
yeah, no, I know, but that was my way. That was my way of dealing with it, you know? And I was just like, no, I'm not going to leave and make you comfortable. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to say what I need to say, because all of my accomplishments, you can't take that away from me. You can never take that away from me. And so just let it be there, you know, and I was able to deal with it in that sort of way. But everybody has their own way of dealing with things. There are a lot of, every time I
she did not have the mental capacity. She needed to be an intervention for her. She needed to be out of that space. It had taken its toll on her.
You know, I don't know a whole lot about what her life outside of academia was like. I don't even know what her life inside academia was like until this happened. I did not know her per se. It's impossible for us to know everyone and everything. And usually what stands out is when we have women of color at PWIs, because it's like, oh, well, she's the first XYZ, so you end up knowing them. But when you're at an HBCU, everybody is Black for the most part. So it doesn't really stand out. So I didn't really know her. But one thing that we really have to do, and this is irrespective of what field you're in, like you said, Dr. Alicia, build a life outside of whatever you're doing, build a life outside of academia, but make sure they're also affirming spaces. Just like all we have to do is look at what we do for our children. When there's so many faculty members, so many people that move to places that don't have necessarily a majority of them for the job, particularly with academia, because you have to go wherever there's a job. So you end up in maybe Paducah, Kentucky, you end up in the Ozarks, places where there are not a lot of people like you, but there may be some. And so what you do for your children is, all right, well, is there a local Jack and Jill? Is there a church or some place where are there activities where they can feel welcome? So the same care and attention you take to making sure that your children and your family is well balanced is the same you need to do for you. That sometimes means, especially if you know, like I know I can't live in the country someplace. So that's why certain universities were out for me. So I'm like, well, if it's not a university in a major city, that's just too bad. I'm just going to stay where I am because I was already in DC. But so when it came to applying for other places, I looked for me at the city first. What was there? What were there affirming spaces? Were there things I like to do? I'm a dancer. Are there dance classes? So you have to think about this in totality. It goes beyond the job. That's just a start, because there are other things that obviously that wasn't the only thing. I'm sure this was probably just a culmination of other things that led to what unfortunately happened. But one thing that you can control is where you go. So you have to look at it in totality. Just don't just think, oh, this is a great job. Have you looked at the company culture? Why have the last 5 people left that position? Something is wrong there. Why are you walking into it? So we also have to take that responsibility to make sure we are putting ourselves in affirming spaces. And even if the workspace is not as affirming, are you in other groups and in other activities that do affirm you so that these people are non-factors?
Yeah,
and I didn't mean to cover up your face, but Denise made a really good comment. She's like, she needed this discussion. Currently working in a predominantly white area, and it's obvious her presence is not wanted by some. Been thinking about how I want and need to move forward. What advice would you give to Miss Denise here? Coach Chasity.
Oh, well,
she's your client.
She can get in touch with me. Are you sharing the links where she can click on the link that you are providing, and I would be more than happy to speak with you for a session to see what's going on. But and Dr. Tashi, I think that's a great point. And for some people who feel like they don't even have that option, that like, I'm not competitive enough to get into the bigger school, I got to go to Paducah, Kentucky. Now that we have these resources and tools like Zoom, it may be starting something online with other women, who are in academia or who are in the public service space, or finding like those groups that you're talking about, the Jack and Jills or whatever, those other, when I was a manager, there's a group for managers. The same thing. When I went into being a manager, I had no idea, I didn't have a network of managers that I could talk to and say, hey, there's been 20 managers in this community before me. What is going on? I didn't have that before, but now that's one of the gifts and lessons I learned out of my situation. So you are absolutely correct in that. But if somebody does feel like, you know what, I'm not competitive enough to go work at University of Florida or wherever, then how can I create those spaces for myself? So that I am validated and respected, and I have, the social connection and support outside of my job. So for the young lady that just put her post up, I would love to talk with her. And that is my mission after living through what I did as a mayor and going through what I went as a manager, is making sure that women leaders are empowered and that they have the courage, because it takes courage. Like you said, Dr. Tashi, you've invested a lot of years in your schooling, your education. There's pressure on you that you need to be here because the kids need you. And there's a whole lot of pressure. But I want women to have the confidence and the support that they need to make the best decisions for themselves, to keep themselves holistically healthy. So we don't see another Black woman get to this extreme: isolation, desperation, and take her own life.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Dr. Tashi. Go ahead.
Really quickly, I was going to say that Denise said she's with the federal government, and I don't know how it works with the federal government. I mean, I used to be a government contractor before, but I don't know how it works within the government. But I know in academia, every single discipline has a society. Like, so we have in NCA, the National Communication Association, we have a Black Caucus and African American division of studies, right? Same thing with BEA. So those are places where we're all really experiencing the same thing, right? So those are spaces where you can not only, talk to other people that you connect with, but also work on, all right, we need to get X amount of publications out of this. How can we work together, get together to make that work? So looking to see whether or not there are group. Now, I don't know about with the federal government, but looking for those types of things within your discipline that you do and see if that can be helpful. That's one thing.
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna sound real angry and cynical.
That's okay.
I honestly don't feel comfortable sharing like all the things that have happened to me, the microaggressions, the big obvious aggressions toward me. I really don't feel comfortable sharing that with really anybody. And when I do share it with like a mentor or something, I don't really see them or anybody else in the position to really help me. I really think ultimately, I don't want to be the one person always complaining. I don't want to be every time you see me, here I go. I don't really think that anybody, and I've been at many different institutions, right? Getting my PhD and in my current institution, I don't really see, I haven't experienced anybody to my knowledge that have really listened to what I've said and fixed it. I always ultimately is just on my own. and I'm sorry, it just is, because at the end of the day, everybody got their own struggles that they're dealing with. I really don't see, I think on some level, and I do want to deconstruct how much of it is our responsibilities versus the systemic things. But I've never found solace in any group, organization, group of people complaining in a faculty member's office. I find it nice to complain and get it off my chest, but I never see anything motivating. I think the system that we live in is a micro system of macro systems, just being Black in America. Honestly, I don't see any sort of outlet. And so I think, like, I'm sitting here grappling right now as we speak. Like, I don't know what to say to a Denise. I don't know what I would say to an Antionette. I don't know what I would say to them, because I am really at a point where I'm so cynical. It's just like, figure out what you want. You're never gonna get. It's digesting the reality that these people are never gonna validate you. And you know what? You don't need it. These people and these systems are never gonna see the wonderful talents that you have and the wonderful gifts that you could bring. It's their loss. It's their loss. And that's how I see it. I'm like, you know what? I'm doing the bare minimum. And it's because I don't want to do anything more than that, because I don't like you. And I'm just going to do my job the way it is. And I'm not even going to try to pretend. I'm not going to smile in your face. I'm not going to pretend that I like you. But guess what? I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do it very well. So you can't get on me with that. But I am not going to look for affirmations. I'm not going to look for you to smile at me, to give me encouragement, because I'm just taking it as it is. I see you for what you are, and I'm going to accept that. I'm not going to try to change you. I understand the racism. I understand that you don't even know you're being racist. You don't even know that you're doing these microaggressions. And guess what? I don't care anymore. That is where I am right now. And I don't know if it's because I'm older. I've been doing this longer, but I am so fed up, because I have yet to find any system that's going to really stand up for me and say, this is wrong. And when wrong things were being done to me, there were so many people that could have stepped in, people that I felt I could have trusted, that could have spoken up for me, and they did not. So guess what? I see you. I'm not going to speak up for you. You're on your own. I'm going to do what I can in my position, and I'm going to move on. I don't care anymore. And I really mean it. And I have to be like that, because I have to protect myself. I see you for what you are. It is a job. I will do my job, and I'm going on about my business, I'm living my best life. And I don't need you to live my best life. I don't know. I'm a little cynical. Maybe that's just what I am.
I understand.
Show me who you are, and I will believe you, and I do believe you.
I understand where you are, but I don't want people listening to this to think that it's just hopeless and they have no choice, because they do have choice. And that's what that's what the article that my colleague wrote was, do you hold steady or do you take the exit ticket? And for each person, but for each person, that decision is going to be different. They may decide to leave. I know another manager, we're seeing it in the management space. Women managers are held to different standards. When they call things out, they're the ones that don't get their contracts renewed. We're seeing the same thing. And some women are deciding, I'm not going back into that space. I'm one of them. I decided to reinvent myself and to pursue a different path and to use my experiences to help other women. So the choice is individualized for everybody. The problem is the system. And until we get more people in the system who are going to do the right things, who are going to make the changes and stop practices that are unfair and inequitable and do that work, which there's an attack on that now, where we are going to continue to run into those systemic problems. But people do have a choice. They do have options. If they decide to stay, there's ways that we can put things in place for them to keep them healthy and to make sure that they have support and that they have resources outside of that space if they decide to stay there. They can decide to leave and go somewhere similar. They can decide to leave and start their own business.
I've seen so many people think that they're gonna, this is wrong here, and they go to another university. It's the same thing at a different university. Nothing that I'm talking about is specific to my institution. It is Institution America. It's our entire system. So there's no place to go. Yes, I could pack up my family and move across the country somewhere thinking that this other institution is going to respect me and all of the things that I know. I mean, I have a master's degree in statistics. How many people do that? No one does that. Do you think anybody looks at that and says, oh, that's wonderful? No, I just did it because that's my own knowledge. And I don't know. And some of the research that I'm doing has never been done before. I mean, and I was just thinking about that. I'm like, good grief, I have really accomplished quite a bit, not to pat my own back or whatever, but I'm done. I am done with looking for any sort of external thing. And I don't think that I don't know if there's any place I can go that's going to give me a different experience. It's going to be a different face, but I really have accepted the fact that it's going to be the same thing at a different place. At least the institution I am now, I know who the good people are. I know who the people to stay away from. I know the lay of the land. There's comfort in that. Nobody really bothers me, and I'm okay with that. And so it's like, I just want to say it's nice to leave and to go different places, but don't get your hopes up too high. Don't be disillusioned to think that it's going to be so wonderful here. You have to have expectations. See it for what it is.
And it also starts with you, right?
Yeah.
We know that these things are systemic. There's really nothing as an individual you can do about the system. You can march, you can do all, you as an individual probably will not change that system. So it starts with you. So if you just take the same feelings, anger, whatever you have, and you just go someplace else, now you just have this anger, these feelings, this dismay with a view. Great. Congratulations. You've just traded palm trees for. So it also comes with looking at you and what you can do, what you can affect, what you have control over. And it's like Dr. Alicia said, it's not the system. Often it's just going to be the same thing packaged differently, regardless of where you go. And that's fine. And you have to decide, is this something I want to stay in? If the answer is yes, then you find ways and devices, because my thing is like, don't give the best of yourself to anybody. So instead of killing yourself to work, you do what you're supposed to do while you're there, and you give the best of yourself to your own endeavors, to other things. Don't give it to them so that because they're going to profit off of your labor and your work and just be so proud of you and all the stuff you did in the media, and then things go back to as they were. So
I like this.
Yeah. It starts with you. You have to decide. And if you decide that, you know what, I can't, because there's no harm in that either. I think sometimes people, especially us, when you're the first of whatever, they want you to stay and fight. Like we were talking about Dr. Gay, right? At her, stay and fight. Maybe she's tired. Maybe
Yeah.
she doesn't want to stay and fight, and that's okay. There's also this overwhelming expectation for us to, once we get in these positions, we have to keep it. If you have a Black business, no, you can't sell to somebody bigger because we have to create. Are you paying my rent, mon frere? No. Therefore, I'm going to do what I feel works for me, and it's okay, because part of also having an equitable mindset is being allowed to do things that other people do, that sell our businesses when we feel like selling our businesses, that's moving on to other jobs when we feel like moving on, despite being the first or whatever. We have to stop being beholden to those things, because ultimately it does not serve you as the individual, which then doesn't serve the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think, oh, go ahead.
Have the courage and the confidence to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been conditioned. We have been conditioned.
Yeah.
To stay in there, hang in there, don't quit. And you're the first, and we're looking to you. And then Blackwood, we holding up everything. We holding up our families, the community, democracy right now. I mean, we are looked to hold up everything.
Yes.
And so I encourage people to read that article that Dr. Anise Fisher wrote, because that's what it's about. You get to make the choice of what is best for you. And you should be putting you first. Nobody else is going to take care of you like you can. And nobody else is going to put you first. You need to put yourself first and figure out what makes sense and what works best for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to jump in because I love what both of you all are saying. I really do think that we do need to have the courage to speak our voice about what's happened to us, to the face of the people that's done it. You know what I mean? Like, even because I have written articles, I've put all of my experiences, and to the point where I'm like, oh, thank you so much. You just now gave me an experience of which I'm going to talk about and I'm going to write about. I made that very public. I'm going to write about this experience that I just had with you, and I'm going to talk about it, because that's the one thing you can never take away my voice. You're not going to do this to me and then have me walk away in silence. No, I'm going to talk about what happened to me. It doesn't mean that I may or may not leave. It all depends on how I feel. But I deserve to be here just as much as you and anybody else deserves to be here. So that's sort of like my attitude in a way. And I would tell someone like an Antionette, I mean, it's tragic, her story. But people in positions like that, and everybody who's listening here today, keep your head up. Keep your head up. Find a support system that's outside of these spaces, of which you can. I really do agree with the support system idea. Find a support system that can validate you, however you can do it. But just know that you're not going to get it. Don't expect to get it from people who are never going to give it to you. You're waiting around getting support from people who don't like you. It's okay. And get support from there, but keep your head up and keep your mouth open. Do not silence yourself. I think, Coach Chasity, you talked about the courage to speak up and the courage to do these things. I think that's where it is, because you can say what you want about any and everything. You cannot take away my experience and my stories that I had with you. I had this experience with you, and you were bold enough to do it in my face. I'm going to be bold enough. You had the courage to treat me the way you treated me. I'm going to have the courage to talk about the way you treated me, because that's my experience. You cannot take that away from me. And I mean, that's kind of where I am. That's where I am. I'm in the middle of the semester and I'm all kind of fired up here. But yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. I'm competent. I know what I'm doing. And that's another way of which I feel like I can react to these systems, is I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to follow through. I'm a professional, and I lean on that, because you can't say I don't show up. You can't say when I open my mouth, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was trained by the best, for real. The best in my field, I was trained by them. That can never be taken away from me. Getting tenure can never be taken away from me. Getting promoted to professor, none of those things can be taken away from me. So, and my thing at the end of the day was, okay, you don't like me, but you know what? I'm going to put together my portfolio and let the chips fall where they may, because I've said that many times. Let the chips fall where they may. Let it rest on my qualifications and my skills and my expertise, because I know that can't be shaken, but the personality things, and you don't like what I said and what I did and all of that. Okay. But you can't take away from me all of those things that I have accomplished and what I have done. And that is basically how I have survived. And that's what I encourage other people to do. Just stop being ashamed of who and what you are. Wear your dashikis if that's how you feel in the day. Put your hair the way you want to put. I wear my hair like this because that's how I feel like wearing it today. Be yourself authentically. And the people who don't get on board, there's always going to be somebody that's not going to get on board. So what? Keep your head up. Anybody want to comment on that before we head out? We've been talking for a while now. So before we leave, let's just we'll start with Coach Chasity. Parting thoughts on this topic. We're talking about the late, great. I'm going to call her great. The late, great Antionette. Let me get her full name here. Antionette Candia-Bailey. She sadly took her own life because she was dealing with a lot of issues. She did due process by putting everything in writing, going through these systems, and the systems failed her. And she was very overwhelmed, and she took her own life, unfortunately, at the beginning of this year in January of 2024. And we are just now talking about it. I can't believe this. This should have been the first thing we talked about. Dr. Tachi, I should have brought you on here a long time ago to talk about this topic, because this shouldn't fester.
Right.
Things like this shouldn't fester. And guess what? We're going to talk about it again, because any opportunity to raise awareness of what's happening, to give voice to the voiceless, we are going to do that today. And this story had been going on for a while. There's no need to suffer in silence. There's a voice here. But anyway, Coach Chasity, last parting words for everybody, and let everybody know how to get a hold of you, because this is your area of expertise. Go.
Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for being here. We lost an hour. You still an hour of sleep last night and you still made it. I don't like to use the word should, because that implies that we did something wrong and there's I think when this happened with Antionette Candia-Bailey, we needed some time to process. I know I did. When I see things like this happening, especially with Black women, I can't always respond immediately. I need time to process, because it raised so many things based on my own experiences that I was having. And so I want to thank you for creating the space for us to come together. Thank you, Dr. Tashi, for being here and getting to meet you as well, and for the work that you all are doing. I just want to end by saying that you are in charge of your life. You have choice, and that there's support. There's ways for you to seek support to get the help, the change, and the transformation that you need so that you can live your life in a way that is meaningful and healthy for you. And that is the work that I am committed to doing, to serving women in that space, to make sure that they have the support, that we can, identify what does a good quality, healthy life look like for me, and to strategize and put that plan together and put it into action so you can get the transformation. You always have choice. It's never too late for you. I grew up with those parents that work for the state, that stayed there for 30 years, and you don't leave that good job and you got benefits. I do not ascribe to that. I am in my 50s and I am starting a totally different chapter in my life, and it's scary, but I'm leaning into it and it's exciting. But I have never felt the peace that I have in my life today that I have right now. And I want that for everybody, especially our Black women. So you always have choice, and there's resources and support out there to help you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Tashi, last parting thought and how people can get a hold of you. I know you got a lot going on. Let everybody know.
We always do.
So this is it's unfortunate that we have to come together because of this. And I think that's actually a call to action, that we need to come together more often outside of this so that this does not happen. Now, that doesn't mean we could have prevented any of these things by having these conversations, but I think it's now a wake-up call that we need to be more vocal, and particularly when it comes to academe, we tend to write about things. I mean, that's the life of academics, right? You write about things, but sometimes there's very little action behind the writing. And when you write, it is writing, preaching to the choir. I'm an academic and I barely read the academic journals that come unless I've written something or by somebody I know. So I think that we've got to do more stuff pop culture wise like this. This is excellent. We need to be involved in pop culture. The fact, Dr. Alicia, that you're holding space to talk about this today and it's going to the masses rather than preaching to the academic choir is key. And more of us need to do that. We need to be support systems because sometimes there will be repercussions for speaking out like this because the system does not like being called out. And so you can't just hide your head. You have to stay strong. We have to stick together. And even if you don't want to, as much as you want to be an individual, you cannot. But you also have to think about the fact that you have to preserve you. You need to go into situations and spaces that work best for you. So if it's not working for you, leave. And there's no harm in leaving. You have to silence and seal your ears to the people who keep saying, but you are the first. Leave it. You have to learn how to do that. And if you can't do it on your own, get help to do that. That's what counseling is for. That's what therapy is for, to start to talk those things out. And we need to start to value those things more. I understand in the past we have been wronged by the medical establishment, and so we don't have a high trust for anything that's therapy, psychology, psychiatry. We don't. But find people in networks. There are whole networks. What is it? blackdoctor.org. Whole networks of
therapy for Black girls.
Yes, therapy for Black girls, where you can find people who can, and that doesn't mean all Black people are going to be amazing therapists, but sometimes you have to go through some before you find the person who works for you. And if you want to find me, there I am at Dr._Tachi, basically everywhere. Instagram is a great place to reach me. And shameless plug, on the 25th of this month, my network is launching Indie Soup Media. So we're the heart of the independent content creator, and we've got a bunch of content creators making shows. So
yes, I love it. I love it. See, this is beautiful. Hopefully people are inspired today by listening listen, all of you all who are experiencing some workplace issues, we see you, we've experienced it, and look how we've mobilize our experiences into something meaningful, something that we can feel proud of, because we are gifted. And if we're in an environment where people don't see our gifts, we can tune out. We can say goodbye to those, and we can cultivate something for ourselves that we feel proud of. And our talents don't have to be recognized. And if it's not, we can go someplace else where we feel like our talents can be recognized. And even if it's building our own. So I really love this. I really love this discussion. Thank you, ladies, for being here with me.
Dr. Alicia, one last thing. I'm putting together a group, Overcoming Imposter Syndrome and Cultivating Confidence. So I put the link here to book a session with me, and that's just a free session for us to talk, so I can see if what I'm offering that will be helpful to you. I am not a therapist, I am a coach, and there is a difference. Therapists are looking at the past and things that have happened and how to help you heal, and coaches are looking at where are you now and how can we move you forward. So there is a difference, but you have two wonderful therapists here on this call. And some people have a therapist and a coach.
Yeah, they do. And, therapists also look forward. We also look at ahead. But yes, that's a great distinction there. Thank you. So listen, we got resources today. There are places you can do imposter syndrome. Definitely that president of Lincoln University, he did not have imposter syndrome. He probably should have, because he had no business being in that position. Exactly. But anyway, there's no need to have imposter syndrome. You are worthy of being where you are in this moment. Of course, you're not perfect. Nobody is perfect. But anyway, today I just want to dedicate this discussion to the memory of Antionette Candia-Bailey. I can't imagine the pain that she was struggling with alone to put her in a position to take her own life. But hopefully this discussion will motivate some of us to seek some change. Hopefully this university will make some drastic changes in their administration, and everybody will be held accountable for their part in ignoring the voice of a beautifully talented, beautiful woman. She's absolutely beautiful. And you can tell from the inside out, she is beautiful. So anyway, goodbye, everybody.
Being with us today.
Mm-hmm.